Apple Tree Audios presents a spoken word project for your listening pleasure. We sincerely hope that you enjoy the following production. From paper hats to steel helmets. An observational TED Talk written and read for you by CJ Hunter. Do you ever remember back to when you were young? The toys we were given, back in the days when gender roles were set in stone and the underlying message wasn't subtle at all. If you were a girl, you got dolls or pretend jewelry, play makeup, or maybe a frilly costume so you could play dress up. If you were a boy, you got plastic swords or toy guns, cars and trucks, action figures with impossibly square jaws and a weapon in each hand. And why were we given these things? They weren't just toys, they were an echo, a parody almost, of what we were expected to become. That was our training, though nobody called it that, of course, but it doesn't detract from the fact that that's what it was. The slow indoctrination into the trappings of the role we were supposed to fill. Boys would grow into men, and being a man meant being a provider, a protector, or a fixer, or a fighter. Girls would grow into homemakers and baby producers. Nurturers or performers, poets, cooks and cleaners. I'll tell you how it was from the male perspective. From the start, we're fed the images. Stories of heroes and warriors, of men who stood between danger and the ones they loved, who threw themselves in harm's way without hesitation. We didn't have to be told outright, because the lesson was already in the games we played and the praise we got for being brave, or the silence or scolding when we cried too long. We grew into that shape without realizing it. The paper hats our mothers made for us became a helmet. The stick from the hedge turned into steel, and the battle stopped being pretend. We wore the role without question, because it had been fitted to us before we knew any different. The expectation was that we would hold the line, that we'd guard the gate, keep the beasts out of the garden no matter the cost. And here's the thing about that role. It doesn't retire when you do. Once you've been made into a soldier, in mind if not in uniform, the fight becomes part of you. You're always scanning the horizon, always waiting for the next threat, because that's what you've been told you're made for. You measure yourself against that standard every day, whether there's a battle to fight or not. And when there is, you step up without thinking, because stepping up has been wired into you since the day someone first handed you a toy sword and told you to go get the bad guy. There's something that our warlords and the education system, or even the government, don't want you to know or believe. Those whom we're pitched against, the soldiers in the battlefield, those who fall at our hands, they're people too. With their own thoughts and feelings, with their own fears, emotions, desires, strengths, weaknesses, and everything in between. From the cradle to the grave, we're instilled with the us and them mentality, led to believe that the other side is the enemy. They're the bad guys. You hear it all the time with the Americans and their angle of, fight for our freedom. When in reality, if the Americans stopped bombing the Arabs wouldn't bomb the Americans. And the same could be said for any 2 or 3 or 4 sets of people, pitted against each other in the age-old dance of war. If 2 soldiers stood face to face, touched hands, and looked each other in the eye, they'd realize, we're not so different, you and me. Sure, we wear different colored clothes and we carry different rifles. Of course, we're told by our puppet masters that each other is the enemy. We tell each other we hate each other. But you cut me, I bleed red. I cut you and you bleed red. Inside, we're flesh and bone. And that's the thing they don't want you to see, because the moment you start to see it, the whole machine stops working. The enemy can't stay the enemy if you see his face and know his name, if you've heard him talk about his kids or the place he grew up, or how he misses the taste of food from home. The narrative only holds if you keep each other faceless, if you keep the distance. From the time we were children, running around with plastic rifles and toy helmets, we were being rehearsed for that separation. The us and them was already baked in. The games of cowboys and Indians, cops and robbers, good guys and bad guys. It was never just a game. It was training to see the world in sides, and once you've learned to pick a side, they can send you anywhere and tell you who you're meant to hate this week. But the truth is, most of the men who've stood on either side of a battlefield don't hate each other at all. They don't even know each other. They're there because someone higher up told them to be. Because orders came down and the expectation was set long before they even put on a uniform. And if they'd met anywhere else, be that in a pub, on a fishing boat, or standing in the same market queue, maybe in prison or on the train, they might have laughed together, shared a smoke, or swapped a story or two. That's the cruel joke of it all. We're raised to believe we're born protectors, and then we're handed the script that tells us exactly who to protect against. I don't think it's about freedom, not really. I believe it's about keeping the wheel turning and feeding bodies into the gears. And the easiest way to do that is to make sure neither side stops long enough to see that the man in front of you isn't a monster. He's just another poor bastard who was handed a weapon and told it was his duty. And so the wheel keeps turning. One set of boys grows up playing War in the Garden, graduates to the real thing, and comes home, if they're lucky enough to come home at all, carrying the weight of everything they've seen and done. They tell themselves they'll make sure their own kids don't end up the same way, but the machine is patient. It doesn't need you to believe in it forever, only long enough to pass the ball. Before you know it, the next bunch of kids are playing soldiers with the same plastic guns, being told the same stories about bravery and sacrifice, watching the same films where the hero kills the villain and gets the medal. The roles haven't changed, only the names of the enemies. The us and the them keep swapping faces, but the script stays the same. It's handed down like an heirloom nobody asked for. Fathers, uncles, older brothers. They tell the stories, with pride or with bitterness, but always in a way that says, this is what a man does. The uniform might be different. The desert might become a jungle. The jungle might become a city street. But the expectation doesn't move an inch. You fight, you protect. You take the hits, and you don't question why. That's how it's been for centuries, from the cradle to the grave, generation after generation, taught to believe that the world will only keep turning if we're willing to bleed for it. And the cruelest part is, it works because the fear is real. They keep the fear alive, because fear makes good soldiers, and good soldiers keep the wheel turning. But what if we stopped? What if, for the first time in history, we turned around and looked the so-called enemy in the eye and said, no, I'm not doing this for you or them. And I'm sure as hell not doing it for the ones sitting safe and comfortable, counting their coins while we count the dead. Because here's the truth they hope you'll never work out. Wars don't keep themselves alive. They only go on because we fight them. They need our hands on the rifles, our boots in the dirt, and our sons and daughters lined up in neat little rows ready to be sent off for the next round. But the very second we refuse and put down the sword and step out of formation, the whole thing comes apart. And it isn't the other side they're scared of, not really. What they're scared of is the day we wake up and see that there isn't an other side at all. That every so-called enemy is just another person trying to get through their day, trying to earn their living and hold the people they love. Trying their best to raise their children and see them grow. And they're terrified of that moment where we shake hands across the line and realize, you're not my enemy, and I'm not yours. Because that's when your puppet master's control slips. We've been told since we could walk that being a man means standing guard and holding the line, keeping the beasts out of the garden. But maybe the beasts aren't the ones over the wall at all. Maybe they're the ones who built the wall in the first place. And maybe the bravest thing any of us could ever do, braver than marching into battle or taking the life of someone we've never even spoken to, is to put down the weapon, climb that wall and meet the people we were always told to hate. That's where the cycle breaks, in that moment where enough of us see through the whole thing and decide we're not playing anymore. And I promise, when that day comes, no amount of flags or anthems or shouted orders from above will be enough to send us back. Because once you've seen it for what it is, you can't unsee it, and once you've understood that the enemy was never the man across the line, you can't ever be sent to kill him again. Because in the end, the only war worth fighting is the one against the lie that ever told us we were enemies in the first place.
My mother made a hat for a soldier. She made it from paper and paste. She built me a sword out of bits of old board, which into my hand she then placed. She picked up the hat, put it square on my head, looked me straight in the eye, and softly she said,
"Fierce wild beasts run free in our garden, down by the bushes they roam. So go, little man, and do what you can to keep us all safe in our home." Fierce wild beasts run free in our garden, down by the bushes they roam. So go, little man, and do what you can to keep us all safe in our home. And now that I've gone for a soldier, with a proper tin hat for to wear, with a gun in my hand, I am told I must stand to fight for the things we hold dear.
and her voice, it comes back as it did on that day, and I see her sweet smile, and I know what she'll say.
Fierce wild beasts run free in our garden, down by the bushes they roam. So go, little man, and do what you can to keep us all safe in our home. Fierce wild beasts run free in our garden, down by the bushes they roam. So go, little man, and do what you can to keep us all safe in our home. Wild beasts run free in our garden, down by the bushes they roam. So go, little man, and do what you can to keep us all safe in our home.